Hello and welcome to the first episode of Filmmaking Flashback, where we take an in-depth look on the development of popular movies. Today we're taking a look at the first entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man. Our story begins in the early 1990s. Marvel's competitor DC Comics found much success in the release of multiple Superman movies and their newest hit franchise, Batman. But while DC was thriving, Marvel wasn't doing so hot. Their live-action stuff wasn't doing well, comics weren't selling well, and while they had some animated hits, it wasn't enough to save the studio. Marvel filed for bankruptcy on December 27, 1996, which fortunately helped them pay off their debts. One of them, coincidentally, to Disney for $1.7 million. Now that Marvel had paid off their debts, they could finally focus on the future of their business. That future included a collectible trading card game, interactive CD-ROMs, and a chain of restaurants called Marvel Mania. Unfortunately, their ideas weren't enough to keep them afloat. They shut down the projects after only a year. Marvel was being backed into a corner, sales were at an all-time low, so they started looking into selling the movie rights to some of their characters. So now, with all these different studios in possession of all these different characters, we won't be seeing Wolverine interacting with Spider-Man on the big screen. The first Marvel movie to come out since the deal is Blade in 1998, distributed by New Line Cinema. It was a pretty big success, making almost triple its budget at the box office. This proved that general audiences were willing to see more movies based on comic books, which leads us into the next Marvel movie after the deal, X-Men in 2000, distributed by 20th Century Fox. It made back almost 4 times its budget at the box office, and was pretty well received by critics and fans alike. All this praise caught the attention of the newly founded Marvel Studios, run by Avi Arad, who hired the associate producer on the X-Men franchise, Kevin Feige, as his second-in-command. Together, they looked towards making Spider-Man 2, alongside director Sam Raimi. It was a huge success, making back nearly 4 times its budget at the box office. Critics and fans loved it, and it even won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Ever since Marvel divided its film rights, we've had 2 Blade films, 2 X-Men films, Daredevil, Hulk, The Punisher, 2 Spider-Man films, and even though there's been a few flops, it's pretty safe to say comic book movies have been thriving. Now let's rewind to 2003. Marvel's David Maisel came up with an idea. What if we stop selling our characters and create our own production studio to make movies using characters we have? Doing that would allow them to retain 100% of the profit instead of getting little to nothing from other studios. Marvel decided to pass up on the idea because it was too risky to make movies without their biggest moneymakers like Spider-Man or the X-Men. Despite declining the idea, Maisel still wanted to go through with it, saying, "If we produce a movie and it fails, we can't really be worse off than we are selling everything off to other studios and making no profit." This brings us to 2005. The Marvel board approved Maisel's plan for a 7-year deal worth $525 million to finance their first few movies. However, to get that $525 million, Marvel had to put up something as collateral. They put up Captain America, The Avengers, Nick Fury, Black Panther, Ant-Man, Cloak and Dagger, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Power Pack, and Shang-Chi, which was almost everything they had. This means that if the plan failed, they would lose the rights to every single one of those properties, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be shut down. And so Marvel cracked down hard to make this work, striking a deal with Paramount to distribute their films. Their ultimate goal was to lead up to an Avengers movie, which would be the culmination of all the characters Marvel risked losing. But there was one problem. The only characters Marvel had were relatively unknown to the mainstream audience. They're not going to see a movie about a team of people they don't know, but what if we made a bunch of solo movies about the different characters in the movie? That could work, but who to start with? Captain America had a few TV movies that weren't very well received, so they figured they shouldn't go with him again. Thor was too unknown. Shouldn't start with him either. Hulk was stuck over at Universal with a license that's close to its expiration. So what could they do? Well, over at New Line Cinema, their license for Iron Man just lapsed, meaning he got to go back to Marvel. Iron Man's a good place to start, but since it wasn't part of Marvel's collateral, they had to finance the movie on their own. So they did, and in November of 2005, Marvel officially announced Iron Man as their first film. They had a budget of $140 million. The story was pitched to around 30 writers who all turned it down due to the relative obscurity of the character. So to build awareness to him, Marvel formulated a plan based on focus group testing to release 3 animated short films called Iron Man Advertorials, produced by future Deadpool director Tim Miller and Blur Studios, whose other works include Avatar and the Arkham game series. In April 2006, Jon Favreau was hired to direct. There were 2 scripts written, one by Art Markham and Matt Holloway, and the other by Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby. Favreau combined ideas from both scripts, and John August wrote the final version. Once that was done, it was time to find someone to play the title character of Iron Man. Many people were considered, from Tom Cruise to Nicolas Cage, who turned it down to star in Ghost Rider. Favreau wanted to cast a newcomer in the role, until he brought up the idea of casting Robert Downey Jr. Marvel rejected the idea due to Downey's past criminal activities and drug abuse. Favreau, however, was adamant on casting him, saying, "It was my job as a director to show that it was the best choice creatively." Everybody knew he was talented, and certainly by studying the Iron Man role and developing the script, I realized that the character seemed to line up with Robert in all the good and bad ways. Downey screen tested for the role, convincing Marvel that he was the right choice, and was officially cast in September 2006.
Oh, Mr. Stark, you have been described by some as a Da Vinci for our time. What do you have to say about that?
Da Vinci, ridiculous. I don't paint.
Oh, and what do you have to say about the fact that Stark Weapons is responsible for millions of deaths since World War II?
Oh boy, let me guess. Berkeley? Ms.
Miss Summer, and it's Brown.
Okay. Well, listen, Ms. Brown. It's an imperfect world, but it's the only one we've got. I assure you the day weapons are no longer needed to keep the peace. I'll happily transist to manufacturing bricks and beams for baby hospitals, making hemp pants and the like, but until that time, can I get you a drink?
Over the next few months, additional casting occurred. Terrence Howard was cast as James Rhodey Rhodes in October 2006. Gwyneth Paltrow was cast as Pepper Potts in January 2007, and Jeff Bridges was cast as an undisclosed role in February. Choosing a villain was difficult. Favreau believed the Mandarin wasn't realistic enough and would only work in a sequel with an altered tone. It wasn't until Jeff Bridges was cast that it was decided to be Obadiah Stane, even though Stane was intended to be the villain in the sequel. The Iron Man armors were constructed by Stan Winston. He built a single 90-pound Mark I armor, which caused concerns when a stuntman fell over inside of it, though both the stuntman and the suit were fine. He also built a 10-foot, 800-pound animatronic Ironmonger armor, which required 5 operators for the arm and was built on a gimbal to simulate walking. The Mark III was designed by Iron Man comic book artist Adi Granov and Phil Saunders. Granov's designs were a primary inspiration for the film. Filming began on March 12, 2007 on former Hughes Company soundstages in California. Favreau said he didn't want the film to take place on the East Coast because too many superhero films had already been set there. The first few weeks of filming were dedicated to Tony Stark's captivity in Afghanistan. The cave interior was a 150 to 200 yard set, and the exterior scenes were filmed at Olanka Sand Dunes in California, where the cast and crew endured 40 to 60 mile per hour winds. The exterior of Tony Stark's house was digitally added to footage of Point Doom in Malibu, while the interior was built on the soundstage in Playa Vista, where Favreau and production designer J. Michael Riva aimed to make his house look less futuristic and more grease monkey. Filming concluded on June 25, 2007 at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. Favreau said, "I'm shocked that I was on schedule. I thought there was going to be many curveballs." A fair statement to make given the fact that the script wasn't 100% done before shooting began, which led to a lot of improvisational dialogue scenes. Favreau felt that it made the scenes feel more natural. The Nick Fury cameo was filmed with a small crew to keep rumors from getting out, but they got out anyway and started spreading on the internet days later. Kevin Feige still wanted to keep the surprise though, so he had it removed from preview copies, and when the film was released, it was held until after the credits for the dedicated fans who stayed in the theater until then.
Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Favreau wanted the score to be heavy metal sounding, saying that Tony Stark was more of a rock star than a superhero. The film was composed by Ramin Djawadi, who played most of the film's score on guitar, and the orchestral score was done by Hans Zimmer. Our first look at Ironman was at San Diego Comic-Con 2007, where the first trailer would be revealed. The Comic-Con trailer was never officially released to the public, but leaked online on September 9th. After that, there were Iron Man toys at Burger King. 7-Eleven stores across the US were selling Slurpees and exclusive Iron Man cups. There were action figures based on the movie, and as was usual back in the day, there was a video game tie-in released around the same time as the movie. Iron Man was officially released in the US on May 2nd, 2008. On its opening weekend, the film made $98.6 million and finished its theatrical run making $585.2 million. It made back over 4 times its budget. The film currently stands at a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Critics and audiences alike loved it. It won Best Summer Movie so far at the MTV Movie Awards. It won Hardest Hit and Best Fire Stunt at the Taurus World Stunt Awards. And at the Saturn Awards, it won Best Science Fiction Film, Robert Downey Jr. won Best Actor, and Jon Favreau won Best Director. This was the start of something great for Marvel. Superhero movies were going in a new direction, and it was clear that Marvel had something special. But can lightning strike twice? This was only the first part of Marvel's new cinematic universe, and they have 4 more movies to make before the Avengers. So join me next time on Filmmaking Flashback, where we'll be taking a look at The Incredible Hulk.
Honey, what are you doing?
I am
Iron Man!
That's right. I'm unstoppable.
You can discover your own power at Burger King with Iron Man toys from the new movie. 6 in all, 1 toy in every kid's meal.
It's hot as an oven in here.
Iron Man toys are now at BK.